Hello, eRank. Welcome to another Thursday live Q&A with me, Pam, and him,
Me, Bryan. Hi, everyone.
Hey. And today we're going to talk about all things shipping. Now that we're through Cyber Monday, Black Friday, all of that. Hopefully, hopefully you had a good time with it. But with that comes the responsibility of, are your parcels going to get there on time? So we need a Bryan to show us all of that, and we might talk a little about this EU elephant in the room thing that everyone's a little bit interested in.
The GPSR or GSPR?
Too many letters. GPSR, General Product Safety Regulations.
Yep. And that's kicking everybody's butt, and it's not 100% clear yet. We're still trying to figure this whole thing out. It does come into effect December 13th, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yep.
A little teaser for what's to come.
Exactly. But I will say, none of us are legal experts. Even Etsy can't figure out this. I did speak to a kind of legal expert, but we were talking for about an hour and I've kind of forgot most of it. Because there was a lot. I have pages worth of stuff, but yeah, my brain melted halfway through. So I might get brighter people than me to sit in on a call and we can figure it all out.
That's probably going to have to happen because it's one of those things that's just really, really complicated for no reason. So it's fun.
Yeah, I will say, because I just did a video on this, so I've got a lot of comments on this just now. This is not a kind of punishment for a certain thing that the UK did. This is an international thing that the EU is doing, and from what I understand, it's protecting itself because of cheap mass shippers like Temu. They want to know what is coming into the country is safe, and that makes sense. I think we've all, if you've shopped from some of these sites, you go, that's great there, yeah, this is nice and safe. Well, this is nice and cheap, and it comes in, you're like, what did I actually just order? What's really coming in? So yeah,
it's true, and they're not labeling their products properly. There's a lot of chemicals that they use which are not the best for the environment, and so this is Etsy's way, or not Etsy, this is the EU's way of kind of controlling what's coming in, the way that Germany deals with the waste, and France has their EPR, Germany has Lucid. It's kind of similar to that, where they just want to know what's coming into the country, especially since there are so many harmful things which could be entering the market.
Yeah,
and they want someone responsible. They want someone responsible for that stuff that's coming in.
Yeah, sorry if my audio sounds awful. I've just spent half an hour trying to tell my computer to switch to the correct mic and it refuses. So yeah, we'll let Bryan do most of the talking if I'm so awful. Unfortunately, it refuses to use my good mic and it is just using my webcam mic. So I sound like I'm using your webcam mic, I'm afraid.
Which right now it's starting to sound like you're like the microphone, the palette thing is broken. So it sounds like a speaker that's broken where you're still getting audio, but it gets a little choppy at times, depending on the sounds that you're making at the time.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, guys, I'll just sit here and look.
No, the robot.
You can deal with it. I am constantly pressing buttons saying, sort this out. But my computer doesn't want to. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not changing. Sorry. Technology. I literally was rebooting my PC and everything right up to the last minute, and no. Robot Pam, yay!
Also, if anyone has any questions, drop them in anytime. We'll get to your questions as we go, and we need your questions to fill up some time. So let's do that. Yeah, when it comes to shipping, let's just jump right into shipping. do we want to do the screen share first? We did not discuss this beforehand.
We've planned nicely.
We're going to show you eRank's tool in a little bit. First, we just want to talk about the woes that could be happening right now. Between postal strikes and carriers just slowing right down, you want to make sure that you are on top of things and that you're keeping your customers aware of what's going on. If there are going to be any delays, if there's going to be delays in you shipping stuff out, just keep everyone aware and in the loop. That's how you keep reviews positive, because if something's late, that sucks. But if you get ahead of it, if you're giving good customer service leading up to that, then you could still end up with a 5-star review and a repeat buyer, because you were able to jump in and let them know what was happening throughout the whole process. So if you do so it's kind of a good idea to keep an eye on stuff that's in shipping, or that's in movement, just so that you know what's going on, and if you do need to contact your customer, because they're not necessarily looking at tracking. So when you're proactive, you win.
Yeah, and be aware. Don't get mad at your customer if they message you and say, my item's late, what's happened? It's better if you're on top of it. But what's happened is, for the past few years, Etsy has its purchase protection program, which is a guarantee when the person buys, Etsy is telling them, basically, get your item on time or your money back. So the customer is told a date. I don't know about the rest of the world, but looking at the time, Etsy, well, it's not Etsy. I ship through the Royal Mail in the UK, and the Royal Mail say international shipping will take 3 to 6 days. No, it won't.
It's very, very, very optimistic.
Yeah. So Etsy's going, okay, here's Pam's processing time, and the Royal Mail say it will take 3 to 6 days. So customer, you'll get it in this time. So the customer messages you like after 7 days and goes, where's my item? So unfortunately, they're absolutely quite right. So with that thing, as Brian says, it's good to keep an eye on it, to get in front of it, to say, here's what's happening. But if they message you with that, then you want to be able to go in and say, hopefully, if they message you with that and your items qualify for the purchase protection program, I think Brian might have some things to mention about Canada and everything. We've been talking about that. But if your items qualify, just link them to the article on Etsy, let them know to do a claim. They have to message you on the I need help with my order, and then 2 days after that they're able to open a case and Etsy will normally refund. Etsy is they seem to be looking into it a little bit more. I've heard a few people say that Etsy didn't automatically refund and has actually refused to refund some people, that maybe the customers were taking advantage of the system. So we've had a few of that, but in general, Etsy will refund, and if your item was eligible, they shouldn't refund out of your money. Etsy will cover it. So.
Yeah. And during the holidays, it is up to $500 that Etsy's covering, not just the $250 throughout the rest of the year. So bigger orders are covered by that as well. And there are going to be customers that do lie about it, and that's why it's good that Etsy's the one dealing with all this, because that way individual sellers are not getting screwed over. Because it always happened that customers would say it didn't arrive or whatever the situation, so they would get refunds. So now they would have the product and a refund, and they would just do that to seller after seller after seller. Now that Etsy's handling it, they actually know when those people are trying to scam the system, and they will just not refund them and block them from using Etsy anymore. So it's actually, it's not just purchase protection, but it is protecting sellers as well, which is always nice. So Irene mentioned that last thing. She said she's getting it's a bit more expensive, but also protects me when it's pretty much stopping me from where's my order messages, which you're going to get some, because people have Amazon expectations, even though it's Etsy. So
and this time of the year more so, yeah, that you are going to get these, because people obviously they've ordered stuff and they need it.
Yeah.
You know, they don't need it. The world's not going to end if your auntie hasn't got a pair of socks or something. That's, come on. But people feel they need it. They get a bit panicky. People are shorter this time of year. I think we all are a wee bit. But as Brian says, yeah, the Amazon expectations, they don't even necessarily know they're buying from an individual. They don't understand the site. That's the same on Amazon. I feel sorry for individual sellers on Amazon that get treated like Amazon, basically. But yeah, just be aware they can be more short with you. Don't take it personally. Have planned in your head what you're going to say. Even have little snippets ready to go, because
that's what I was about to say. Use the message snippets. Etsy provides that within messages. You can add snippets, which means that you can have pre-written statements. And I use those all the time, and I basically make them fill in the blank. So that there's spot to put the tracking number, there's spot to put the person's name, there's spot to make it personalized for the person, but that way you don't have to rethink exactly what you're going to say and retype it every single time, which is really good if you're on mobile, because typing on mobile and switching back and forth between screens is always a nightmare. So the more that you can just single click, there's the message, the better. So create those snippets. Also, then you're prepared in advance. Instead of worrying about it when you get that message and being like, okay, what am I going to say? Instead of having to think about it every single time, or worrying about, oh, I only have like 5 minutes now, I can't really type out a whole thing. Be prepared for it and actually have those ready to go. And it just saves you time. It saves you that customer service smile. So even if the person is coming in hot, you don't have to respond hot. You could still respond with your calm demeanor that it was a few weeks ago when you wrote that snippet. So it's always good to just be prepared and prepare for every situation that you could think of that might happen. Like, where's my package? It says delivered. It wasn't delivered. Is it even shipping? I see it hasn't shipped yet. All of those types of things kind of have little snippets ready, and you can put them into folders so that these are my shipping questions, these are my order questions, these are my refund questions, so that you kind of have it all ready. One of the snippets that I have is for the purchase protection program. So it's how to get a refund from Etsy, and it goes through all the steps, and that way you don't have to look up links and copy and paste and do all that stuff. You just have to one click and there it is, because it was in your snippet. So snippets, use them.
Absolute lifesaver. Yeah. As Brian says, I think the most important thing is it takes away the stress from you. I see in the forums so often people are getting angry saying, my customer said this, they're scamming me. But if you've gone through in your head all the things, look at these forums and don't get angry. Just look at what customers are potentially saying and say, how would I deal with this before it happens to you, before you're angry? Because so often I've had customers and they're coming in hot with their first message. It seems awful. But if you respond professionally but personally, don't sound like a business. Make sure they know they're talking to a real person. Empathize that you understand shipping slow. It's a nightmare for you as well, but do the whole, us two, we're in this together. We're working together against the big nasty man that is shipping companies and everything else. And you can, a couple of messages that you've already planned out in advance, and you can calm a customer right down.
Yep. And Tech Perch says, I make my snippets up in ChatGPT and my customers love them. Exactly. So you don't even have to think of them in advance. Just throw some situations, some scenarios at ChatGPT and say, what's a professional response if this is the situation? And ChatGPT will give you something. And personalize it a little bit, make it your voice. But it's just, if you can't think of anything, ChatGPT is an amazing resource for that kind of thing. And it's free, so might as well.
You can even, ChatGPT, paste in some of your regular messages. Say, this is how I talk. How would I say this? And get her to write in kind of your voice. But as Brian says, never take anything wholesale from ChatGPT and just go, this is what I'm saying. Always read it, because sometimes they do not do as well, although they are getting much better. ChatGPT even reads websites and provides links now if you ask it. It's great.
Exactly. Nadia said, could you let us know if Canada Post strike has finished yet? It has not. And as of 2 days ago, they are not doing well. They walked away from the table, so there's no plan on it ending. Hopefully the government does step in at some point, because that's passports, that's social security checks, that's I'm waiting for my health card. I renewed my health card. I don't have a current health card. And then also all the businesses that it's affecting. So hopefully, just like the previous strike a few years ago, the government steps in and says, you have to deliver mail, and then it becomes rolling strikes. So things are slow, but they're at least moving, because right now there's nothing, and there's no plan on it being fixed anytime soon.
I think we had this like 2 years ago. I think our government was threatening to bring in the army to deliver mail when the post office was like, okay, right, we'll sort something out.
Justina says, question specifically to Brian, as he is in Canada, which I am. I know now about the strike, etc., but in general, I have issues with Canada Post. Orders arriving after 3+ weeks, no tracking updated. Is that normal for Canada Post? I send to the States, Australia, etc. Never a problem like with Canada Post. That is not a common thing up until a few months ago, when things just started to slow down and people were more upset with like at Canada Post. And so things have been getting worse, but for the most part, Canada Post is just like any other service where things usually go well. There's always going to be the off case that shipping sucks. Royal Mail has that same issue. USPS has the same issue. UPS, FedEx, and DHL, they have that same issue where you can have amazing experiences, or you can have the worst experience of your life, and you just don't ever want to see their trucks on the street anymore because they're just that bad. So experiences will vary. Generally, they're pretty good. I've never had an issue with them. And I send a lot of packages, not so much through Canada Post right now with the strike, but they're just like any other mail provider where everything is fine. If you are shipping to more rural areas, because Canada is extremely vast and there's only like 15 main cities, but Canada is one of the biggest countries in the world, so there's a lot of rural areas. Those you will get spottier tracking. But if you're sending to a major city, which is where most orders will be coming from, just because there's more people, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I know. About 10 years ago, definitely, I used to have a lot of trouble shipping to Canada. But it seems to have been better. I know that was the first ever claim I made was to Canada. My post office was like, yeah, they're bad. But I think they've got so much better.
I think that Canada Post is actually fine. It's the border that's really bad. Because we have a very, very low threshold where anything over $20 Canadian is taxable. So we have to pay duties or customs on anything over $20, and that just slows the entire process down. And there's a lot of border security, a lot of checks of the mail coming into the country, because that's also one of the ways that illegal things come into the country is through mail and through the border. So that's where it can be spotty, but Canada Post themselves are actually pretty good. It's just the border aspect of it, which can be hit and miss sometimes.
That could, because she's saying things taking more than 3 weeks, and in any country, items can get hung up in customs for a good deal of time. Generally, it doesn't happen, but when it does, it's annoying. And
when it does, it's really frustrating. But for the most part, that doesn't happen. It's sending to literally any country that's not your own. That type of thing can happen depending on who's working the machines that day, and if there is anything in a package around your package, not even necessarily your package, but around your package, which is iffy, then they end up holding huge chunks of mail just because something is sus in the vicinity of it.
Yeah,
It's a
and
problem.
don't assume. I've seen this with people shipping to the UK, and they always get angry when the UK buyer doesn't understand everything about our customs. Don't assume your customer knows what's going on. Your customer in Canada or anywhere else, this might have been their first international thing they've shipped in. It's not common knowledge how customs work and stuff when they're buying stuff overseas. They don't sit and go, "Oh, I'm now an importer." They're just like, "I just wanted something off of Etsy."
Yep. And on top of that, on top of people not knowing how international stuff works when they receive a package, a lot of people within Canada during this strike don't actually know that there's a strike happening. If it hasn't affected them, or they don't watch the news or whatever the situation is, a lot of people just don't know that there's a strike. So they could be upset that they're not getting their package or that things are slower because they just don't know. So if you are within Canada, shipping within Canada, make sure to keep your customer aware of what's going on. Have it in your announcements, have it just anywhere in your shop, just so that people know what's going on, because not everyone does. Some people, I was going to say, live under a rock. They don't necessarily live under a rock, but they just aren't aware of things that don't impact them on a day-to-day basis.
It's a good point, actually. Like 5 years ago, I would have said most people know what's going on with the news. But I think after the past few years, many of us don't pay that much attention to the news. We spent a year or two doom scrolling, and now it's just like, tell us when something's broken.
Yeah, it's true. If it's not in the news section on YouTube, I have no idea if it exists. I have no idea.
Yeah, I get most of my news from Philip DeFranco, to be honest. But yeah, you see that little news bit in YouTube, but it's like, oh, what blew up? Right, okay.
No. Michelle said an angry customer frustrated her package took a tour of New Jersey and had not arrived. She threatened me with a scathing review if it doesn't arrive tomorrow. Use my calm, saved snippet. She apologized to me. Exactly.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's what the snippets are for.
Yep. It's
Because,
so
as
that
I said,
if
yeah,
someone's coming in hot, you're very, very likely to just attack and be like, "Oh yeah, well I tried," and instead you get to keep it calm because this is something you wrote at a previous point in time when you had time to think it through, instead of, I need to respond to this message and I'm gonna
yeah. And that's another thing I see all the time. Sellers going, when a customer comes in angry about a package, and the seller's like, not my problem, I shipped it. The customer has no one else to go to. You purchased the shipping labels and everything. You have the contract with the shipping company. The customer paid you to ship something to them, so that you are the contact they have to reach out to. So, yep, it might be angry and whatever, but yes, a nice calm saved snippet just to say, I know what's going on. I'm going to look into it. Let's see what we can do. You don't have to claim fault because it's obviously not your fault, but you want to claim responsibility that I'm going to look into this. I'm going to try and figure out, I'm going to be here for you, kind of thing.
exactly.
Oh, Nadia's asking, what courier companies would you recommend to avoid the Canada Post strike?
It's mainly Canada. Canada Post is the only one on strike. Canada Post actually owns 81% of Purelator, or 91% of Purelator, but Purelator's still moving. It's literally just Canada Post. If you're within Canada, there's other options. If you're in a major city like Chit Chat, Stallion Express, Click Station, Ship Monkey, there's so many different, or Net Parcel. There's so many different options if you're within Canada. If you're shipping to Canada, then you have to use a courier, which is UPS, FedEx, DHL, Purelator, Canpar, whatever else there is. Any local mail, like if you're shipping with USPS, Royal Mail, Post NL, anything like that, those will go to the border and then they're using Canada Post. So USPS has actually said, we're not even accepting Canadian parcels anymore, and most mail services are probably doing similar. So you actually have to send through a courier. If you are sending through a courier, this might just be bias, but do not use UPS because Canadians get hit with a major extortionary brokerage fee, and that's been a huge issue for many years. Versus FedEx and everything like that, we still have to pay the taxes, but there's no brokerage fee because that brokerage fee can sometimes cost a lot more than the item itself. It's absolutely crazy.
Ouch. And couriers are very expensive at the best of times. So.
Yeah. So adding more on top of that is not fun.
Always make sure if you get an order from Canada or whatever else, message your customer. Although we say people are really needing their item for Christmas, there is also a lot of people shopping just now because they want stuff.
Yep.
They're spending already. And if you say, there's the problem with the post strike or whatever, is it okay if I wait till next year to send your item because it's going to get caught up in this nonsense? Because, you know, even if your country is still sending to Canada, it's going to get tied up and sit in somewhere where it's not being looked after. So it's better to be sitting in your house. And I've had lots of customers that are like, you know, if they order off me just now, I'm going to be telling them, even if it's not to Canada, I'm going to be saying it's not going to be there by Christmas. Is that okay? It would be better if I wait till after the holiday to ship, because if I ship just now, it's getting tied up in all the holiday shipping.
Exactly. And once again, you can have a snippet that says that, so you don't have to manually type that each time, because that's just not fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all the questions. So let's jump to eRank. Let's I didn't prepare this either. Share screen and eRank. Share. So we're just going to show you something that eRank has to kind of help with the process a little bit. How do you zoom in on a Mac? Command? Yeah. And let's just... Okay, so first, this is under Shop Insights, and you'll find Delivery Status. So this is what the Delivery Status report looks like. You could choose your dates of when you want to be looking at, of the package, of when the order came in. And then once you select those dates, you will then see all of the orders and whether they're in transit, whether you've shipped them. If they've already been delivered, you'll see it says delivered. I'll zoom in on that a touch more. There we go. So you'll see it says delivered if it's been delivered. If it's still in transit, you'll see in transit. It'll tell you the service that's being used. So here you can see for Grimsby, I used PostNL. For that word, I used PostNL. For Chicago, I used USPS. This one in Summerhill, I used Stallion Express. And so that'll kind of give you an idea of what is still moving. So I have a lot here that are delivered, and then in there, in the middle, there's one in BC, Victoria, BC, that is still moving. So that's one that I want to keep an eye on, because why have the ones around it arrived, but that one hasn't? In this case, it's because it's Canadian, and Canada shipping is sometimes slower. You could see the US ones have arrived. They say all the ones on this screen say delivered are going to the US. The ones that haven't been delivered are one to Toronto and one to North Yorkshire. And so this will kind of give you an idea of if things are moving. And that's the delivery status report. You can choose your date range. So you could look at just the last 7 days. You could look at the stuff that came in the last 7 days. Let's look at that. I'm guessing everything is going to say in transit. Because if you do have a busy shop, you will sit on this loading screen for a minute, unfortunately. The last 7 days, this is loading a couple hundred orders right now. So it can take a long time, or it could be just instant. So everyone will get a different thing on that screen.
Brian's shop's super busy, so it has a lot to load.
Busy. It's been busy. And so once again, all of these will be in transit. I shouldn't have anything delivered in the past week. Oh, there's one. This one went to New York and it's already been delivered. New York is my fastest one. It takes 1 to 2 business days. So that's why this Rochester, New York also delivered, but everything else is still in transit. So I know that it's moving, which is important. It'll also tell you if it's in pre-transit. It'll show up red if there's an exception of some sort, because this is all based on the tracking from your carrier or from the carrier that's being used. So if there's an exception, it'll show up in red. You'll see exception, and then you know I have to deal with that because something's wrong. It won't tell you what's wrong, unfortunately, but okay, I won't click on them. When you click on the in transit or delivered, it actually goes directly to the postal carrier. I don't want to click on them because then it'll show the tracking code and the address and everything. So I don't want to click on those. But it does bring you directly to the tracking, which is nice. I believe if it's delivered, let's just find those delivered ones. Nope. Okay, that also goes to tracking. So it goes directly to the tracking site so you can see what's going on, which is nice because that's also the link that you would be sending to your customer. If they say, where's my package, blah, 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 your tracking number is right there, and you could just copy the link. Versus Etsy's tracking is sometimes difficult to even find how to copy that tracking number or where is the tracking number. It can be frustrating sometimes. The delivery status report on eRank makes it just easy to find that tracking number and check packages status just quickly. So if you don't have many packages going out, it makes it a lot easier because you can actually see all of the packages in the last month to make sure that things are moving. If you're in Canada and you sent stuff with Canada Post, that'll also tell you, is it moving or is it stuck? Because stuck is not great, but at least you can see that and you'll know right away.
Yeah, well, you get it all on one screen because in Etsy, you'd have to go into each individual order to see what's going on with each of them. Find the tracking.
On Etsy, you could see it in the order on the order screen, but you can only see 50 orders at once, and you have to scroll through the entire page to see the orders. Versus this, it's all on one screen. You could choose the dates so you're not looking at orders that you know have arrived and you don't need to deal with. You can also filter by, you could click on status. So it'll now sort it by the status. So is it in transit? Is there an exception? Is it delivered? You can see that instantly just by clicking it. All of these fields are sortable. So if there's a certain carrier that you want to check up on because you know that they're not the greatest, you can click on carrier and now it's sorted by carrier. So there's all my post NLs. And then the Stallions, and then the USPS. So it'll sort it by the information that you need to sort it by. And this tool will eventually get an update, I imagine, in the new year. So if you do have any feedback about this tool, about what you want it to do, let us know, because as we're updating all these tools, we want your feedback. We want them to be as useful for you guys, the way that you track things or the way that you use eRank. We use it in our way, you use it your way. Let us know what your way is. That way we can update the tool so that it works best for you instead of just best for us, because I know we probably do things differently.
Yeah, you might have noticed at eRank we have been updating some of the tools. So that means the team are looking at them. So this is the best time to be telling us what you love and what you don't love about them. Here we have delivery status. I love the delivery status because you can see if there's an issue for a particular day, it shows it up. The only annoyance is the Royal Mail doesn't update readily. They always seem to be in transit, which is why Brian showed his screen and I didn't show my screen, because the Royal Mail doesn't connect up quite as well as it should, unfortunately. That's just how Etsy talks to the Royal Mail rather than, but that's just the data that eRank's got, unfortunately.
If you thought Canada Post was bad,
Royal Mail's pretty good, but it just doesn't like Etsy all that much. Now,
No, and you guys can't use calculated shipping either, which is
no, we only got shipping labels a couple of years ago. So that's so that's probably why we don't have everything there, because Etsy only just fairly recently gave us shipping labels, so it hasn't given us the full functionality. Because I don't see why things like calculated shipping couldn't be a thing. I don't know.
It could also be that oh no, because if you can create an Etsy label, then they can get the pricing, so there's no reason. They just haven't linked it in the right way yet. That's all it is. Yeah. Everything takes time.
Exactly. They did finally give it us, and I resisted for a while, but it's actually really good.
It's convenient. It's definitely convenient.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I used to be taking, not this year, but I used to be taking armfuls of parcels down and having to get each one of them put into the system and stuff. So it's much better that my postman can just scan them now. But, well, in the UK, the QR codes aren't great for international ones, and they still have to type everything in, but that's Etsy and the Royal Mail.
Mail.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the big thing, is make sure your customers are aware, and make sure that you're aware of what's going on as well, just to be proactive if there is an issue. So
yeah, I think the fact we can only see tracking is probably a Royal Mail issue. It's stodgy and British, which I think is the perfect explanation. Yeah. I used to have no trouble ever with the Royal Mail and, I suppose, Parcel Force. They're two different companies, but the same company, and it did some kind of tax fiddle for their bookkeeping, I believe. It's not, don't sue me, Royal Mail, but yeah, it used to be a super good system. Everything's getting worse. That's just it. The whole world's getting worse just now.
It's true. Technology.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest takeaways, I guess, is just keep people informed, and remember, you can update the ship by date. You can't do it in the app. You can only do it in a browser. You can update the ship by date by going to the order, clicking on the menu, and then you will see update ship date. You can only do that once per order. So if you do need to extend the shipping date, make sure that you're giving yourself enough time. One of the big reasons to do that is if someone gives an address that the system's just not accepting, you can't ship there for whatever reason, it's not a valid address, it's coming up as not valid, and you need to message the person and they haven't responded to you fast enough, update the ship date and give yourself enough time that you can get their response and ship it out. If you're not getting a response right away, you can click on their username and that'll give you their email address. So if through messages they're not getting back to you quick enough, because you want to get your packages out just as much as they want to receive them, you want to get them out. So that's another avenue that you can use to reach them if they're not responding through Etsy messages.
Yeah. Everyone let us know how your busy period was, because things will hopefully be calming down for the people that were way too busy, and for the rest of us, it's the tailing off to the end of the year. Kelly's using my favorite word, but yeah, let us. I don't even know if I can say it on YouTube, but it is actually a technical word for how things are getting worse. I think it's more used to describe, I first heard this, I love it, but it's more used to describe how companies like Amazon started out giving you the moon dead cheap to suck you in, and then they get bad as they've sucked you in. But
after they've destroyed all the companies, then they can treat you like crap because you're stuck. They've already destroyed all the other companies.
Yep, that's...
Find a bookstore. Where are they?
Well, there are some here. There's a little town in the borders that's known as a book town, and it just has tons of bookshops. So you can all come over here and come to the book town. But in general, yeah, totally. And I used to love even just the bookstores that had their little coffee shops attached, and you could just sit, and it was so nice.
All the little bookshops where they have like the old books, and you. I was addicted. It's bad.
I still I don't know what it is. I get books online and I read them online, but you just seem to read them so much quicker, and it's just not a thing. But when you read a book, it takes time, and it smells in a good way. And yeah, there's a lot more. Books are good.
And that's another thing I wanted to address too. Tech Perch said, I have closed my store. I have never had 100 open orders, but this week, whew. Yep. Do not be afraid to close your store so that you can catch up. A couple of years ago, we got completely murdered, and we actually closed down for a week leading into Black Friday. We opened up for the long weekend, and then we had to close again just to try and catch up on orders. We just were not prepared for that onslaught. And do not be afraid to close your store down, because it's better to not sell something than to have really angry customers or to cancel people's orders that they're really expecting for Christmas, and then it turns out that you can't get it there in time, or that you can't produce it because you ran out of materials, or whatever the situation is. There's nothing wrong with shutting your shop down. The beautiful thing about vacation mode is you can actually leave a message, so when people come to your shop, they can see that message letting them know when you're going to be reopening, and you can reassure people that their orders are still being processed and all that type of stuff. So do not be afraid of vacation mode. It is just, it's a saving grace sometimes.
Yeah, I think for the past 4 or 5 years, I've always shut my shop. This is the latest I've had my shop open in a very long time, and even then I'm not promising I'll get stuff to them. I was just kind of leaving it open enough because I didn't want this to be the worst year in 10 years. I wanted last year to be the worst, but I think I'll just shut my shop. But the year that I decided to do that, 2 things happened. One of them great, one of them surprising, but great. The first thing was I chilled over Christmas. I didn't have so many messages going, where are my items? I didn't have to worry about all of that. I could just have a break. And sometimes it's important to do that. But the other thing that was really cool was people came back in January and said, I tried to buy from you. Can I buy now? People came in September and October and said, I was too late last year. Can I buy now? So you might take a hit, but if you send it and it doesn't turn up, they get refunded. If it's not covered by purchase protection, you might be out of an item and out of money when you'd have just been out of a sale. And it kind of, it gives that social proof. It looks good if your shop's shut because you were too busy, and people are like, oh, I'll have to remember them. I mean, tech purchase stuff is amazing. You know, you have to remember and go back another time.
Yep.
That's that social proof's a great thing. So yeah, you don't have to stay open. Give yourselves a break if you've had a great time.
It's true. So why don't we talk a little bit about GSPR?
Yeah, on you go. Yeah, has everyone heard of this? Basically, if you are selling anything to the EU and potentially the UK and potentially, if you're selling anything to the EU, there is new legislation coming in the 13th of December. It is not designed to hurt Etsy sellers, but at the minute in time, it's hurting us because nobody really understands 100% how this works for us. This is the problem, and it does require legal people to be able to look into it. But as it stands just now, you need an authorized representative in the EU to be your cover, basically. they're responsible for your items being shipped into the EU. They're the contact if something goes wrong and stuff. So you need this. And they also have to keep all the records and everything for you. So as you can imagine, that's expensive. And the companies that have opened up that are doing this, it's very expensive. Up until a few days ago, the cheapest I'd found was £1,000, $1,000 a year. I've potentially speaking to some people that'll be a bit cheaper, but it's still going to cost money to do this because you need a representative who is in the EU who can keep all your records and all this. So it's a big deal.
And that's just one aspect of it. That's just the authorized person, the responsible person rather. And then you still need to have your products be in compliance by having them properly labeled, having different languages depending on where you're selling. If you're also selling it from online, then you have to make sure that online has all of the documentation required. The product needs to be either stamped, or the packaging needs to include all of the materials, all of the safety information. For small parts, you need to get it certified that it is safe. And if you're selling things for children, you need to make sure that it's child safe as well and get all the proper documentation for that. There's a lot of things that go into it. That the responsible person is just one specific aspect of it that costs you quite a bit of money. And then everything else, the way that you package your product, the way that you ship your product, the way that you label your product, also is going to cost a lot of money. There's a lot of very frustrating things about this. And so a lot of people are turning off the EU. Do not be worried about doing that. It does hurt, especially if you one of my biggest 5 countries is Germany. And so unfortunately my Lucid fees are going to go unused because I am not in compliance.
Too much. A lot of people gave up with Lucid, and so this is getting tougher and tougher. I did say at the start, I have been speaking to someone who does have the legal qualifications to talk about this. My brain got melted, but there are a couple of things that it's potentially not as bad as we think. It is. We should be keeping track of what we're selling. So some good things, like some of the testing, when you get your materials in, if you're not ordering them from Temu, that you should have access to some kind of safety sheets on what your items are already. So keep a note of that. Keep a note of what you're putting into your items. Some of the safety testing, it's more to cover your back, and you won't have to do a safety test because you've got all this documentation, but you've just got to do a little thing in your head saying what are the dangers of this item. And this isn't a really big deal. It's just saying, if I have a little thing, I want to give some care instructions to say to them, don't wash this in bleach, don't sit it on top of a candle, don't do the dumb things. This is safe to be an ornament. It's not designed to be used like this. And if you have that in your description, that could potentially be, and you're showing that you've thought about it, so that could potentially be a thing. You're supposed to have these kind of things in the language of the country, but if you have it on a website, there's the potential that that's going to translate, so you don't have to do everything. So the guy did mention to me, if you have your own website, in your packaging you could put a QR code to the page that explains everything, and that could cover you. So there's some clever things. I'm not giving legal advice, but I'm just saying it might end up not being as complicated as we think.
I mean, it's similar to what happens with California for people in the US, where you need to know what's in the product. If you're shipping to California from outside of California, and I'm pretty sure from within California, your products need to be marked. The packaging needs to be marked, whether it's carcinogenic or it can cause cancer, or there's lots of other things that have to be on the packaging or on the product for stuff going into California specifically. This is similar to that as well, just knowing the dangers of your product and making sure that it's clearly legible. This is the original point of this whole thing is for large companies like Temu, like all of the importers that are bringing in billions and billions of dollars worth of product into the country. They need to know what it is. Unfortunately, as smaller sellers, we are also importing, and so we just kind of got roped into it. If there wasn't the Temus in the world, this would not be an issue, but unfortunately they do exist, so we have to be in compliance as well. It's a much bigger hit on us smaller sellers just because we don't have as much money being generated in these other countries versus something like Temu, which has billions coming in. So they have the money, they have the resources, they have the legal team to be able to make sure that everything's in compliance and they are the responsible person. Justina said, is it for sellers from outside EU selling to the EU or also for EU sellers selling to EU?
My understanding, if you're in the EU, you're your own responsible person.
Yes.
But your items still have to be compliant to be sold in the EU. A lot of this is hopefully just going to be a process that we just have to put in place, which is just having somewhere, whatever your raw materials are, having somewhere where you keep an eye on what they are. So if somebody asked, you have to keep all this stuff for 10 years. There was a site that this person told me about. Oh, there we go. It's a free site that you can keep a note of all your sales with what materials were used and stuff, and it's called VTiger. I haven't looked at it yet, but it might be worth looking into. But it's to keep a note of everything that you've used, and then I'm going to have to go back and double check with him, but he was mentioning this could be something where if you don't use SKUs in your listings, start using them for this, to say everything that I use that uses this materials has this SKU, and then you can track yourself that way, and just keep a note of who you're able to look and see who you sent certain things to. So if anything happened, you would be able to contact them or stuff if necessary. I don't think many Etsy sellers are going to have to do product recalls and things, but it's.
Mandy and I were talking about this last night, and basically it's going to be like the Steamboat Willie thing. When Steamboat Willie became public domain, now people were using it, but how are they using it and what will Disney go after? We don't know. Just like with this, we don't know until the EU actually starts going after people, until they start bringing people to court, until they start issuing fines, until they start forcing recalls. We don't actually 100% know what the process is of what they're going to do, or what body is actually going to be taking care of any of this, or how much do they care. We have no idea. Will they come after the little sellers that are selling $100 in a year to the EU, or will they only focus on the larger ones? Unfortunately, we don't know.
I'd
That's
say the only advice we can give just now, until you understand it, probably turn off shipping. And it sucks, I hate to say this, but if we don't understand what we're doing, we should probably stop until we figure out and let somebody else get sued. I would much prefer people who aren't us getting sued. And if you are a high volume seller to the EU, hire a business lawyer. It would be worth your time to get the proper legal thing. If you only sell a handful of things a year, it's just a hit we're going to have to take until somebody else gets sued on your behalf.
Anna said, but does this widen the market enormously for EU to EU sales? Yes and no. It will, just because a lot of people outside of the EU are likely to not deal with any of this and just turn it off. I've already turned off the EU for my shops because I just don't know the process, and I don't feel like right now is during Black Friday sales is not the time to worry about
It's a
all of
big
this stuff.
ask,
So,
isn't it? Yeah.
temporarily it might.
In
The
your
problem
busiest
is
time of the year and dive into legal stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
just what you need.
You guys have the advantage of being your own responsible person, which is perfect, but you guys also have to be in compliance. So in that sense, it might not actually promote EU to EU sales any more than anything else does, just because it's only one aspect that's covered, you being the responsible person. Everything else still has to be in compliance. Everything else still has to be exactly the same, whether you're in the EU or not in the EU. So there's not really a big advantage. There's just that one aspect, the responsible person, that would help EU sellers. And the fact that people not in the EU are like, I don't know about this. I don't want to do, and that will definitely be helping out as well.
Yeah. And in the EU, you obviously can't put off shipping to yourself or anything. So contact your government, contact local small business things, say you as Etsy sellers need help with this. There's such a potential for you gathering the market and making lots of money in the EU. Help us, please, because yeah, it's tricky. I wanted to grab this by Tech Perch because it's reminded me of a thing. Do you know if there's a reason why Etsy can't separate Northern Ireland out for shipping profiles? I wanted to quickly, because I've had a few people message me saying it's no problem, I'm sorted, I've switched off Ireland, and I forget that the rest of the world doesn't necessarily know about the UK, Great Britain. Yeah. So Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, and so you would think it's not in the EU. However, when we Brexited, when we left the EU, there was a problem because Northern Ireland is connected to Ireland being part. So there was an agreement that Northern Ireland wouldn't lose its way to ship to the rest of the EU. So it's sort of in the EU and it's sort of not. And it's very complicated just now. Literally, we don't know how shipping to Northern Ireland is working. There've been talks about it in Parliament. It's a mess. So eBay and Amazon have left everyone with the option to stop shipping to Northern Ireland. Etsy haven't done that yet. They might be about to. They might be hiding their head in their sand. It's a difficult one, but yeah, switching off Ireland doesn't
Turn off Northern Ireland, which is the
yeah.
problem. Is Ireland in the EU?
Yes.
So Ireland is, Northern Ireland also is, but Northern Ireland is still considered the UK.
Yes, Northern Ireland is still the UK, but it has a little agreement that it should be allowed to ship as if it's in the EU. We knew it was going to be a mess when we decided to leave, but people put their hands over their ears and said it wouldn't be a problem. No, it's a problem.
It's a problem. The good thing is that Etsy might do something. They haven't said anything, but they also said that like this is exactly what happened with Google Analytics, where for months and months and months they were saying, no, we have nothing. We can't change over to GA4. We're still stuck on UA. And it was the day before that they finally did it. Etsy tends to do things very last minute. Yeah. When it came to the new regulations in Canada with the extra 1.05% being added to every order, they did that very last minute. Everything seems to be done at the very last possible moment. So the hope is that on December 12th or possibly the 13th, that Etsy actually figures that out. The problem is that if you already have packages if you already have open orders that are shipping or have already shipped that haven't entered the EU yet and haven't entered the EU by the 13th, they need to be in compliance.
Well, a big problem is, as far as I can tell, to be compliant, you can't have listings for sale into the EU. It's not enough to not send them. They can't be for sale. And in the UK, we can't switch off the UK. So
you
my
can't
items
not
are
be
for
in
sale.
compliance.
Yeah. At the minute in time, my items have to be for sale in Northern Ireland. But Etsy might do something, because Jessica, so I spotted this, but I didn't know it wasn't a thing. But Jessica spotted that we now have EU and non-EU Europe in our delivery settings.
Yeah.
So I don't know how recently that is, but they've done that. So that's the thing. So they could add Northern Ireland. There could be more trouble with that, because we don't actually want to separate out Northern Ireland. There might be legal reasons we can't separate out Northern Ireland, because there's a whole the Good Friday Agreement, which is signed by the US and all sorts of other countries, that says we can't treat Northern Ireland badly, which is a very good thing. But this might be treating Northern Ireland badly. So I'm laughing, but that's in
Tears are on the inside.
Yes, this is a mess, and we need it sorted out. Hopefully Etsy's doing what it can, but also hopefully all our respective governments are doing what they can to sort out, because Nadia is saying, trying to understand, do the small businesses have to comply? Yes, everyone selling on Etsy has to comply. As far as we can see,
everyone selling on your own website, you have to comply. Everyone selling on eBay, Amazon, if you're selling through a paper catalog that you send, you have to be in compliance. Anything being shipped into the EU has to be in compliance. Even if you're a small business that sells 2 things a year, you still have to be in compliance.
Yeah. And Jessica just came up with something earlier as well, because we weren't sure, but she asked Etsy Chat, not just shipped, digital too.
Yeah.
So
which at the moment you can't actually turn off the location that digital items are going to. A digital item on Etsy is being sold to everywhere in the world. So that's something that Etsy's going to need to address.
Yeah. Nadia is asking, where can we read about it? The link's too long to put on YouTube. I should have put it in the comments here. If you join our Facebook group, which the link's in the description, if you're not already there, Deb has the link. We'll hopefully post it up as soon as we're done here, because she posts up a link to the video. So hopefully Deb will, please, Debbie.
Basically, it's Europa.eu. That's where you can find all the documentation, but we'll have the exact link in the Facebook group. So don't forget to join our Facebook group if you're not there. It's facebook.com/group/EtsyRank. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us here. Check out the other videos, not just the live, but check out the other videos that a lot of members of our team are doing. And don't forget, on Reddit, every Sunday, we drop a new link for Etsy shop critiques. And so just let us know what issue you're having, and one of our team will actually look at your shop, dive into it, and give you advice, give you help, and help you succeed. And that's over on Reddit in the eRank community. Anything else I missed? I don't know.
I think that's it for now. Well, don't forget to come back next week, when it might be me and Starla. I'm not sure. I might have a working mic.
It's a surprise. Who knows who's going to be here? Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Bye.